Good morning, this is Jeff with Sewer Tech Northwest. We're at 10418 Southeast 51st Avenue here in Milwaukee. We are located in the front yard area. I describe everything as if you're standing in the street facing the front of the house. We're under a little green valve cover box here. This camera lens cleaned up a little bit. It's a little further out than your average sewer cleanout is. I'm glad it's under this valve cover box, or you'd never find this thing. Anyway, we're off to the right of the front doorway. The line looks like it shoots out of the house right about where that foundation vent is. Cleanout's right here. We've got a 3-inch ABS cleanout. And this thing is deep. Dang. That gets way down there. It's like the kind of depth you expect to see on a house with a basement in it. So, anyway, this clean out is the style that does not allow you to go backwards. The angle of the pipe is just too steep to reverse the camera's direction. So there's a little bit of pipe between here and there that's just, I mean, it's feasible to scope, but it generally is going to require something pretty awkward, like pulling a toilet, something like that. So, anyway. We're going to drop in here. Some of these lines are it's just the way they are, the way that they're designed. A lot of houses have these directional style cleanouts. As we drop in here is where we connect in with all the actual sewer line. I have to measure the depth on that thing. It's like 7 feet deep right here. Anyway, we've zeroed the foot counter out, water's running, and off we go. We've got some stringy junk in the line right here. There's also quite a bit of grease buildup in the line. We're going to, or at least right there is anyway. We'll revisit that here in a minute and see what that looks like after the camera goes over it, kind of knocks some stuff loose. Transitioning there almost immediately to 4-inch 3034 PVC. Yeah, and there are some bushes and whatnot out near here, so it's possible we could have roots there. But when you get a nice big thick skiff of grease build up in the line like that, and you have people in the house, you know, either long hair or someone who likes to flush their dental floss down the toilet, stuff like that, it can get hung up in the grease. Another spot we're going to revisit here, that joint there is showing some separation. It's not affecting flow or functionality. We'll take a second look at that on the way out to see if there are any obvious signs that the joint is compromised and open to the ground or anything like that. Alright, there's the main lateral connection at about 43 feet out. So, we're going to pull the camera back just a little bit here to get out of this hard dive to get a better locate. We're going to go drain the line out here. I'm going to do a few different toilet flushes to help break any loose stuff out of the flow line there, so we can get a better view as we come back in as to what's going on in the flow line. But from just a simple flow standpoint, at least the pipe we're looking at right now, all of it has good flow to it. But more to look at. Alright, still got some water draining through the line here. It should stop here in just a moment. But anyway, while that's happening, located the camera head out on Southeast 51st Avenue. Line does a pretty darn straight shot out to the main. It does meander a little bit, but overall runs. If you draw an imaginary line from the clean out to about the middle of the road, that's essentially the path the line takes. I did a bunch of toilet flushes. I also ran some really hot water for a minute to help loosen up anything my camera kind of broke loose there. I'm hoping we can get a view as to whether or not that's roots there or some other kind of debris. Interestingly enough, a little fun fact for you. These steep slopes like this, like where we drop into the line, where that little bit suspicious spot is out there where we may possibly have roots, the steeper the line is, the more aggressively grease will build up. It's kind of counterintuitive to what you would think. I think those steeper slopes would allow stuff to move faster. grease or fats in general, as they cool down, thicken up and start moving slower. So as the line gets on the outside of the house where it's buried underground and deep and cold, any hot water you were running starts to cool down pretty rapidly, and water does not start slowing down until it starts to freeze. So what happens is the water starts to outrun the grease, and it leaves it behind because it starts moving so fast. It's kind of an interesting phenomenon as it relates to buildup in the line. Another spot I want to take a look at right there too, that my foot counter just goofed up. Bumped my camera funny there. My foot counter doesn't want to count backwards now. Anyway, I'll redo the video and put the foot count on the report if there's anything to notate anyway. Now, the hard part I'm having here is my camera lens keeps getting greased up to see fine detail. I'm going to pull back in here really fast to see if I can get that junk off the camera lens. Yeah, that's a hard one there. There is so much stringiness to that it could indeed be roots. There's a lot of gunk built up right there. The hard part is there's so much grease buildup over the top of everything that it makes it hard to see exactly what we're looking at there. It's still entirely possible. There are some households out there, dental floss in particular, that people like to just flush down the line out of habit, and it gets hung up in places. And this is an especially tricky one, being that this clean out does not allow us to go backwards. If we were able to or start at the foundation wall, if we were able to come from further back, we would have a clear shot at the pipe joint to see if there's anything intruding through a joint. Some more water just turned on here. So right now, that joint there does show some separation. I am not seeing any obvious signs that it's open to the ground. There's no dirt clods sticking through, obvious streaking going down the sidewalls like groundwater seeping through it. This spot here also caught my eye. You've got some kind of staining around it, but I don't see anything obvious going on here. Joint looks like it's sealed up. I don't see any obvious root hairs. There are some cobwebs there. Anyway, what I'm going to recommend in this circumstance, just because we can't get a clear view, is to get the line cleaned up, or I guess what you could start with before jumping to the cleaning. You might want to have this, the cleaner there on site potentially. But if repairs, for instance, are necessary, if there are indeed roots there, and you can catch that, you can see a clear root intrusion going through a pipe joint. The grease buildup throughout the remainder of the sewer line is not significant enough, in my opinion, to warrant jetting the entire line just due to that on its own. You could always have the drain cleaner on site, or have a company out that does both. Probably the most efficient way to do this would be to pull a toilet on the inside of the home, that bottom bathroom, run the camera out through there to see if you can see a root intrusion coming through a pipe joint. And sometimes if there's enough buildup, it could still be necessary to clean the line, but I don't want to see someone spending money to jet the sewer line out for no good reason. And sometimes jetting a sewer line can remove the evidence of things, that can cut stuff out so effectively that you won't see it. So that's probably the better way to start there. And if there's nothing, if it's not obvious enough, obviously I would move to jetting, re-scoping to check afterwards. Best way to do that without removing all the evidence is, you know, just make someone aware of what's going on here so they don't too aggressively jet things. You can kind of zip over an area and clean stuff up well enough that you kind of remove the grease off the top of it, but not necessarily cut the roots loose. That's assuming they're roots. So there's plenty of stringy mass there that could easily be roots coming through. I've done 25,000 sewer scopes. I have seen everything under the sun. I have seen homes where people have flushed wads of fishing line down the line, for instance. Things like that. They can look very similar to roots, but in reality aren't actually roots at all. So it's a hard one. The color of that, because of all the grease and everything, makes it very difficult to discern. There's just so much gunk built up over the top of it. So that's where I would start. Everything beyond that point, and it would be ideal, obviously, to see everything from the house to this point, but that's what that other access point would allow for. But everything beyond basically the base of the clean out, right where that suspicious spot is at there, has good flow. All of it appears to be intact, although there's that joint there that shows some level of separation. I don't see anything obvious going on there that shows me that joint's actually open to the ground. I'm not going to recommend you dig the joint up just because it looks that way. The joint shows, or doesn't appear to be open to the ground at all. It just looks like they didn't butt the pipe ends up against each other all the way. You know, in an ideal world, you do have that, but at this juncture, you're talking digging a very, very deep hole, and or at least spending thousands of dollars to do a trenchless liner or something like that to fix something that's not exposed to the ground and not affecting flow. So biggest concern here is what's going on right here at the base of the clean out and potentially prior to it. If you do have roots here, there could also be other ones between this point in the home. So I think that's a worthwhile thing to take a look at. Obviously, if roots are found, first and foremost, I'd recommend they be repaired to have a more permanent fix. Obviously, you can maintain roots by drain cleaning, but it's something you have to keep up with. Ideal scenario, if they are indeed roots, is to correct it and fix it to help prevent them from returning back and causing a problem.